Welcome to the Well-Oiled Mind, where we specialize in history, biography, philosophy, and psychology. Join us and illuminate your life. Before we get going, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe so we can keep the awesome content coming your way. Now, let's get to our video. Adolf Hitler, a concise overview. Adolf Hitler is one of the most infamous figures of the modern world, and understanding his impact is crucial for students not only of the 20th century, but for those interested in the current global state of affairs. Also, for those high school students out there anticipating the European Advanced Placement Exam, World War I, World War II, and the life of Adolf Hitler are all likely exam topics. So, join us now and learn about one of history's most diabolical characters. Early life and initial ideological influences. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889 in Braunau am Inn, a small town on the border of Austria and Germany. His early life was marked by a strict upbringing under his brutish father, Alois Hitler, and a nurturing relationship with his mother, Clara. According to some psychologists, Clara overindulged and favored him over his other siblings. The balancing act the young Hitler had to navigate possibly made him prone to a life of extremes and built in him an all or nothing mentality. His mother's dotage may have been even more deleterious. This excessive affection may have led him to believe that he was always correct. When people disagreed with him, it ignited indignant fury, accentuated by a persecution complex that grew more pointed the greater the setback. As a youngster, Hitler was an average student, but showed an early interest in art, which he hoped to pursue as a career. However, his dreams were thwarted when he was rejected from the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna in 1907 and again in 1908. These esteem-smashing rejections played a significant role in shaping his later views, and they contributed to his bitterness and radicalization. During his time in Vienna, Hitler was exposed to a variety of political and social ideologies, including German ethno-nationalism and anti-Semitism, which were prevalent in the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time. Two key figures in Austria were politician Georg von Schörner and Karl Lueger, mayor of Vienna from 1897 to 1910. Hitler drew the superstructure of his ideology from Schörner and combined it with a brawling, thuggish implementation strategy that he picked up from Mayor Lueger. But implementing these ideas would have to wait. World War I, making of the man and formation of political beliefs. World War I was the formative event in Hitler's life. It solidified his belief in a bastardized Nietzschean credo that violent struggle amongst peoples was what allowed man to transcend his ordinary self, become the Superman or Übermensch, and thereby hoist his nation to supremacy. Inflexible will, not reason, mattered most. Hitler enlisted in the German army and served as a soldier on the Western Front. Like many men, he internalized and came to see as normal the brutality and carnage of war. Moreover, the war deepened his nationalist sentiments and his belief in the need for a strong, unified Greater Germany. To Hitler, this meant the absorption of ethnic Germans within Europe and an expansion of Germany as it was then geographically understood. After the war, one of his key doctrines would be the pursuit of Lebensraum, or living space, for the burgeoning but cramped Germany. In a word, he sought an empire. But, as we know, the war did not conclude in the Kaiser's favor. The defeat of Germany in 1918 and the Treaty of Versailles, which assigned exorbitant reparations and humiliating territorial losses on Germany, were viewed by Hitler as a national disgrace. These twin wounds fused together in him a sense of national and personal loss. More important, he assigned blame for the defeat on internal enemies, Jews and communists. The post-war period in Germany was marked by economic instability, political turmoil, and one civic crisis after another. These turbulent conditions provided the perfect situation for extreme ideologies to form and take hold of populations. and this is precisely the time when Hitler seized the opportunity to enter politics. Rise to power and distilling a national strategy, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. In 1919, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, or DAP, a small nationalist group. His gift for public speaking and knack for crowd work quickly elevated him to a leadership role. The group was shortly renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or NSDAP, to broaden its appeal. This group is now commonly known as the Nazi Party. The party's platform combined nationalism, anti-Semitism, anti-communism, and the promise of restoring Germany's former glory following the shame of Versailles. Sensing a stirring in the people, Hitler attempted to seize power in the 1923 beer hall putsch, or coup, that occurred in Munich. Although unsuccessful, Hitler's eventual trial gave him a national platform to promote his ideas. He received 5 years in prison, during which time he wrote his autobiography and political manifesto, Mein Kampf, which means My Struggle. The book outlined his vision for Germany, including his plans for territorial expansion, or Lebensraum, and the elimination of the Jewish population. Having tried to gain power by direct force, Hitler now tried a more legitimate approach. The path to total control. Following his release from prison after serving just 9 months, Hitler focused on unifying the Nazi Party, which fragmented and withered during his absence. The Great Depression of 1929, which devastated the global economy, hit Germany particularly hard and provided Hitler with the opportunity to gain much greater support. The Nazi Party capitalized on the economic despair by promising jobs, a national revival, and offering strong, decisive leadership. Chastened by the putsch failure and understanding the Germanic desire for order, or at least a veneer of order, Hitler now sought power using existing legitimate systems, and he and his party made headway. By 1932, the Nazis had become the largest party in the German Reichstag, or parliament, though they did not have an outright majority. In January 1933, however, through deft political maneuvering, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. Germany was about to descend into a new age of gangsterism, the likes of which had not been seen since the 30 Years' War. Hitler quickly consolidated power. He used events like the Reichstag fire in February 1933 to justify the passage of the Enabling Act, which gave him what amounted to dictatorial powers. He no longer needed to cloak his party's true nature. Finally, he had the power to enact the plan laid out in Mein Kampf. And now, no one in Germany had the authority to oppose him. From this time on, Hitler's henchmen like Heinrich Himmler, head of state security, Hermann Göring, president of the Reichstag, and Joseph Goebbels, minister of propaganda, loosed a wave of terror and intimidation on the German people and then all of Europe. Open and state-sanctioned violence like the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, where he massacred political rivals, Kristallnacht in 1938, where Jews were brutalized, set a new tone of oppression, coercion, and authoritarianism, not only for Jews and those seen as undesirable, but for everyday Germans. These direct affronts to individual freedom and the sanctity of the rule of law were later undergirded by the more insidious and shadowy operation of the self-serving statutes like the Nuremberg laws. The Third Reich and the road to total war. Fully installed now, Hitler moved to transform Germany into a totalitarian state. He eliminated political opposition, established a police state led by the Schutzstaffel, or SS, and Geheime Staatspolizei, or Gestapo, and began implementing his vision of a racially pure German empire. The Nuremberg laws of 1935 institutionalized anti-Semitism, stripping Jews of their citizenship and rights, squeezing them for all their resources, and slowly pushing them fully out of the German landscape. Hitler's foreign policy was driven by the concept of Lebensraum, or living space, which called for German territorial expansion, particularly into Eastern Europe. This expansionist policy led to the reoccupation of the Rhineland in 1936, the annexation or Anschluss of Austria in 1938, and the dismemberment of Czechoslovakia following the Munich Agreement. In September 1939, Hitler's invasion of Poland triggered World War II in Europe. The Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact of 1939, a temporary agreement with the Soviet Union, allowed Hitler to focus on the Western Front initially. However, by June 1941, he launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, which marked the beginning of a brutal and ultimately disastrous campaign. The Holocaust and other war crimes. One of the most horrific aspects of Hitler's regime was the Holocaust, the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of others, including the disabled, mentally handicapped, political dissidents, and more. The Nazis implemented this genocide through a network of concentration labor camps where undesirables and prisoners of war were worked to death, ghettos where the Jewish populations were clustered to be deported or starved, mass shootings, and the infamous death camps like Auschwitz. The Holocaust was driven by Hitler's obsession with racial purity and his belief in the need to exterminate those the Nazi doctrine deemed subhuman. This genocide remains one of the darkest chapters in human history and a central focus of study when examining the consequences of totalitarian regimes. Downfall and legacy. By 1944, the tide of war had turned decisively against Germany. The D-Day invasions by Allied forces in June of 1944 and the Soviet advance from the east put the Third Reich on the strategic defensive on all fronts. As the Allies closed in on Berlin in April 1945, Hitler retreated to his bunker, where he committed suicide on April 30th. His death marked the final death groans of Nazi Germany, which surrendered fully on May 8, 1945. The legacy of Adolf Hitler is one of blind hatred, destruction, genocide, and the devastation of continents. His rise to power and the consequences of his rule serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of power vacuums coupled with economic ruin, as well as radical doctrines and identity-style politics. His downfall at the hands of the Allies shows that there is strength in unity. The post-World War II peace dividend in Europe illustrates the benefits of collective defense. Nevertheless, as the events in our own lifetime prove, no peace is permanent, and Hitler was not the prototype of evil, nor the last of his ilk. When considering Hitler, one question always arises: was he a monster? Most people reflexively answer, yes, naturally he was a monster. But he was no monster. In fact, to call him such is to lose sight of the critical fact. He was a man. He had parents and siblings and friends he went to the opera with. He loved and was beloved by great hosts and a handful of intimates. He was kind to animals and children and friendly with his personal staff. No, Hitler was a man who perpetrated monstrous deeds. But to call him a monster and cast him as otherworldly hints that he can't happen again because he was supernatural. But he can happen again in similar form or possibly something new altogether. That is the real lesson. Conclusion. Adolf Hitler's life and legacy are central to understanding the major events of the 20th and 21st centuries, particularly in Europe. His rise to supreme power is illustrative of what rights a people will forfeit when they are scared and suffering. Bullies, whether they be on the schoolyard, the boardroom, or at the highest levels of statecraft, must be confronted decisively and with the greatest possible strength. We humans, as the ultimate self-deceiving animals, think war won't happen in our time. All of recorded history, however, proves this to be a fatal and naive assumption. Nations must stand ready and see warning signs for what they are, not what we might wish them to be. We hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, drop us a like and a subscribe for more insightful content. Until next time, keep learning and remember, knowledge is its own reward.